have kneecaps before they're born.
And then they
lose their kneecaps. And then they grow new ones. That's how you know babies are creepy.
So technically you're on your second pair of kneecaps.
You're kind of creepy.
Thanks.
It's literally like this was like this big earlier. I didn't have it first this. Why did it do like that?
Nope.
Did you?
I didn't notice it. It just bounced off my wall.
That's a yikes from me.
Oh, come on. My shot! My shot! It was my shot!
Stop it. I'll bury you down there. And you don't want to get the parents mad or else they'll beat me.
And that'd be a bad thing, right?
Beat me all the time. I thought that was normal.
But what's normal?
Do your parents not beat you?
What was that?
That was a shot. You got the dead wall.
Caleb, watch where you're going to that stick.
Why do I keep it okay? It's surprising me when you say Caleb because I turn around like, wait, what? Oh, you're looking at him.
Wow. Wow.
So it's just the
I
face.
find it weird how the funniest thing is.
Oh yeah.
Okay, come on.
Okay. Miss Monkey.
You missed this.
won.
Okay, who cares? No. Give me the stick, you inhuman.
Never.
I'll just hit you.
Hit her back.
I thought you're like
You're like flinching.
no.
No, what if I just go like,
Break her arms.
give me the stick. Don't break my arms.
Okay, break her legs.
I'm just gonna whack him in the face. Throw it at him to
I give him a Baymax so I don't feel pain that much.
help. Get it out of his hand.
No, it's Vans.
The numbness I feel is beyond belief.
Yo, there's kids under you.
Poke his eyes out. Break his nose.
My nose has been broken too many times.
How about this?
Shoot boy.
Trick shots.
Oh.
Throws it.
Pick a spot.
Yeah.
What? Pick a spot. Anywhere.
It's empty.
Anywhere. Take that ball, put it anywhere on here.
No, you're starting it.
Now pick a pocket. Okay. Now I have to do it. Pick a dot.
The news is overreacting to
So you have to have it right there. And now I have to make it in that pocket. 3 hits or less. And then you have to shoot from the exact same spot. If you can make it in less shots than me, then you get to keep the stick. If I win, you give Danielle the stick.
Do the yes.
Physics won't look like that solid.
You're mean.
It need to be hit. Yeah.
Great idea.
You've been trolled.
Now we put it
Hang on, a scale from 1 to 10, what's your favorite color of the alphabet?
Where are you from?
I thought everybody
Can I
was
play?
gonna use
Oh,
that.
what? It's so dope.
Wait, how many colors?
Ah!
Okay.
Because Mario's always.
Now you get to shoot from
How
the
many
exact-
colors of the alphabet does it take to see?
Maya's going.
So far I have 7,
3 shots or less.
7, 15, 32, 42, waffle, pineapple.
That's so long that was.
No, that's where it was.
No, go back.
No, it was beyond.
I know, but like, you know, it's like.
Zuka Blair.
Die!
It's the exact same thing.
No one feels Nintendo Switch. Why don't you be Falco? Hey,
Why
go be Falco.
It's
No, wait.
Wait, I thought you were the other Mark. Are you not the other Mark?
I'm gaming one.
Oh, you're David Mark? Absolutely not. Wait, who's the other Mark then?
Okay. Yeah, we got one stick.
You didn't make any though.
Okay, but you still lost.
He like.
Theoretically, I didn't.
I lost 2, but you lost worse, because at least I got into a pocket.
Get all the balls out.
Oh, look at me. I have a lot of
Don't
money.
hit my hand.
Choose the others. Do it. This is a hand.
You're
So it makes you feel fun.
What is your birthday?
What's in America?
Why isn't my C-stick working?
You're like almost a week already.
I honestly think I would, but the doctor said
No!
Everyone get out.
Absolutely not.
As long as you act like it.
No!
You did it too early.
I don't like this game.
Then why did you have me fight for it?
No, it's so I could play.
How many are we?
So you could fly, like I could play.
Oh, I thought I was fighting for you. Wait, it's not.
Wait, it's scored.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
What's a star?
He wouldn't like give up play.
What's a stonks?
You know, like when you work with
Ow. Yeah, like,
What's a bike?
can I break?
A stonk.
there's a meme lord.
Oh, that's
No, one time I was playing, one time I was playing online, like, late.
Put it in your pocket.
Yeah, at least it was in a
No.
pocket.
And they were all the same.
Oh, that was brave.
And they kept calling me.
What? How am I over here?
Oh, final
Just hit it. Just PK fire it. PK fire it.
Okay, your stripes.
Okay.
What?
I always survive.
No, do PK fire. Can you? No. Okay.
Don't see stick! Don't see stick!
Oh, wait.
Oh.
That's, oh my goodness.
Are you excited for your phone?
Oh no, whoa.
Wait, are you not gonna get some sleepover?
Are you?
We got to see stick that would be easy.
Wait, isn't the due date today for the sign-ups?
Yes, you do.
That's
Kayla.
my mom didn't
Still on
Oh,
stop.
go back. Go back.
Well, if you're going, then I'll go.
Who's doing that?
The only reason,
Stop.
Stop.
the only reason I
Oh,
was
someone's
thinking
control.
about it was
Whose
because
controller
literally
is
my
doing
birthday
Just look for someone touching the other
Yeah,
stick.
I think it's
that's
wait, hold on.
that morning.
At least
is-
that's fun. I mean, that's me.
Touching the other stick.
No, I'm not touching
There we go.
anything.
It was definitely your fault.
Yeah, I know.
Can you move?
Don't scratch.
So he's not plugged in yet. So pause.
Yeah, how was it?
Was it?
though?
I don't know if this is gonna work.
No, that was really sad.
Yeah.
What are you trying to do? Hit the green ball?
Yeah.
See stick, yellow.
They should just move it over
It's one of
the
those things
table
that's
over
easy.
more so we don't hit this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You unplugged my controller.
That's how you find out what.
Oh, now we won't see.
How you find out which one controls working. You unplug all of them. Good job. Yeah. One by one until you figure out which
Hey,
one.
how's it going? Awesome, man.
Oh,
What's up?
We'll just restart the game.
Jiggly Bob. Sleep calm. Sleep calm, Jiggly Bob.
Oh.
Us two are. There's only two people who want it.
You almost went to school. It was good for a
What
while.
if I hit
Exactly.
Just restart the game. Yeah, restart the game. So we pause and press X.
Up there.
You have recorded.
You're
No
welcome.
contest. That won't do anything.
You hit hard enough.
Yeah, they are level 1. Someone.
But
Wait.
do you have to?
Hold on. Wait. Someone turned me like Corona. See?
Yes, you do. Wait,
What?
CPU. You do.
Why? You're not plugged in?
Oh my gosh.
Hot.
I have the.
Oh! I don't have any money. What's the money?
Yeah, what is
You
money?
sound like idiots.
What is that?
So,
Okay, here you go. Wait. No!
What? How did I miss that? That's just evil.
like, gives it a floor.
No way. Nobody lost it.
It'll like when you're playing pool, you gotta let it all your options.
Okay, we're
I
doing
could
perfect.
probably.
There we go.
Alright. Since you are new,
Not.
can I get stones?
Hey, at least you tried.
I just got hit.
That's very
Stop.
What's
Whoa!
Right there.
I'm just walking
Mine's
away.
in the big support channel.
I'm going over here.
That's how you do it.
I'm cool. Dead ball.
Yeah.
Hey! Got him.
Dead ball.
Let's see.
No!
Snipe.
Hey.
Yeah.
No,
Absolutely not.
Whichever one you want.
Peach.
Hey, you not.
I'm not supposed to be helping.
I think I'm gonna try for the green.
When you
Someone
win.
go get Kirby.
Someone.
I'm switching my mic when I'm in there. Following.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Yeah, I'm switching my mic. I broke it.
Wait, wait, what does Jigglypuff Kirby look like?
Are you wearing your
It's Kirby with hair.
It's like her.
No.
I wanna see
Wait,
that.
no.
There we go. Ah! Go me without being myself.
Practice.
Okay, Quincy, who can I put down as parental leader?
Me.
Mate!
You might catch a corner there.
Grandma, perfect.
Oh.
That's not what I'm scared of. I'm just happy because I
Got
also.
it? Love that. That was my grandma.
I'll give you one guess on what I am.
I'm just
All of these stripes.
Just look at how many there are and just guess. Guess about how many there are and the skill level of both of them.
I'm guessing this is always.
Like me?
He's not wrong.
There are more stripes.
I know.
You just have to yourself.
Good. Stop making it.
No.
Yeah.
Skate park did you guys?
Ben, I will come back after you.
I'm never going to that one again.
Would it work if I were to hit it there and then like stop on it?
I'd go for the
I fell for that. Hit it like right
stripe
here.
right in
Move the finger.
Yeah, there you go.
I need to ask you, is your dad's name
John skating? Yeah.
Wait, how you guys?
I've been like tripping.
Actually, the first time.
Because you're on
In the front.
And I'm
But you
at
guys have like essentially the same name.
I'll change the water butt to the side.
So does he do JOH or does he do JOH?
If he's only on your right side, you can hop on right
He's
side.
John.
Mine.
I've seen you on it.
But it's my sister's
So we could like
friend.
keep track of
Is
who
it
it
a
was. It was really confusing. His name was John, and it had all his numbers in there. And then like when you
My
would
mom
say it
helped
for
her
like
color.
camper haircut or
You know
whatever,
that. Rashawn
you would say
Color.
right. And he's like, wrong. So the magic ray
Double
attached.
from Mars.
Ooh.
maybe don't.
So it makes sense.
Just a little bit.
I'm probably not going to the cheapest skate park ever.
Huh?
Yeah.
So it's like I went
Just pull out your big boy knife. Just be like,
You want to go?
I put in your birthday. Like figures out your age.
I nearly killed myself. That popped open and nearly shattered.
One time I was
It's hard. And then every year graduation, it's just a
Stop watching the game!
No.
hopefully don't get sent back because I
You
just
scratch.
Thank you.
you just all match.
You can't hit kids, Mark. Yeah, I can. Next is a kid. You watch kids.
I just say like red or it is a kid.
Neither.
ooh, game of pool.
Can I talk to you?
Fire stripes.
Anyway,
whose stripe is hard? I'm sorry.
this is
I'm
This is
gonna hit you. I'm gonna hit you.
He tied his.
alright, I guess
That
you
didn't
get to win.
happen.
On that pocket, right there.
Right, because are you saying that because it's white?
Oh, I mean, I still lost.
Oh no.
I scratched.
Next! We're trying to get Jigglypuff right now. Yes! I'm just gonna sit here and draw.
I'm not a failure in life.
You're out.
Can you stop? I'm sorry, you were blocking my.
Oh, see, I'm.
That's not an excuse. Violence is never the answer. Violence is a question and the answer is yes.
Nate, what did your mom get these
Barbie,
copies?
Yay!
Oh no!
Stop,
That's
stop,
good.
stop.
I don't keep taking tracks to my mother all the time.
Wait, who died?
Boy,
Barbie!
stupid. I take tracks to my mother.
Like these copies.
You're mean! No! Absolutely
Alright.
not.
Oh, dang! Oh, my finger!
Leave me alone. Absolutely not. Get out of here. I don't like you.
Where's Shirley coming
Here, you can win.
On this side.
He's getting
So next will be.
Jigglypuff is spamming that move. That's the only move.
That's his only move aside from going to bed.
Ah! You bully me.
Or singing Duck Duck Goose.
What?
It's not allowed. Donovan, look what you've done.
I was born at a very young age.
Alright, everybody, it's time to get started. Grab a Bible out the
Nice parkour. That ain't parkour.
That was not parkour.
Taking this one.
This is running a chair.
Dibble.
What's reading over here?
Go get.
Dabble.
The Holy Bible.
Wow. Holy, it's the Holy Bible.
The Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
Monty Python. Yes, all you have to
Hey,
do,
you got the
see,
reference.
if you once you reach 3, you're fine. Once it's 5, it's too much. If it's 4, then maybe. If it's 2, you need to keep counting.
When a white person
Really,
tries to
really-
sing along with the rap song, we are the knights who sing me.
Be like, 1, 2, 3. No,
Yes.
no, it's 1, 2, 5. Wait, no, 3.
One must count to 3. 3 and not 2 nor 4.
Welcome,
3 and
everybody.
3 will be the number to count
Thank
to.
you for being
If you
here.
go to 5, then you have to
Okay,
too
1,
far.
2, 4.
That was 1, 2, 5. Wait, no, 4. 3, sir. No,
What?
3.
What is your favorite color?
Aha!
No, wait.
Yellow. Blue. Wait, no, yellow.
Alright, guys, welcome.
You must-
Thank you for being here. You are the few, you are the brave, the people who didn't freak out and stay home for everything. So thank you for that. Just so you guys are aware, we're gonna keep staying open. I'm gonna keep on running middle school ministries exactly like I always have until the elders say we're shutting down the church, and they don't seem like they're doing that anytime soon. So we're just gonna keep pretending like everything's normal, because basically it is. If, however, you guys are at any point sick, please feel free to stay home. We will feel so much better if you stay home when you're sick, because we want you to get rest. I want you to get better. Likewise,
Unless
if
you have the settlers to travel the world.
this is a little serious, if you guys actually have any lung conditions, you may just want to check with your doctor before you start coming to places like this where there's a bunch of people gathered. That is essentially the only thing that actually puts you at higher risk in these times, is having a pre-existing lung condition. So if you have a pre-existing lung condition, check with your doctor. Otherwise, you're welcome here. Come around. We're going to do everything normally like we would. So Friday nights have been really good so far. First night we did was After We Die, Heaven, Hell, and Other Religions. Friday this week
Dinosaurs.
last was Dinosaurs, Dragons,
Dinosaurs.
Cavemen, and Evolution.
Dino nuts.
It was a great
Dino.
Fun. Had so much fun.
Dino dragon
It was
cave.
only like
This
3
Friday
pieces
will
of
be
donuts
some mac and
and
cheese
that.
and toppings to fancy it up.
Donuts are good.
Bacon crumbles, and I like sauteed mushrooms myself. I think that's delicious. But yeah, we'll have all kinds of little, breadcrumbs, that kind
Mac
of stuff.
and cheese.
Make it fancy.
Really good.
Some meat.
Huh.
And then we'll be talking about body image, self-worth, depression, alcohol. And the last night's coming up on the 27th. That'll be boy and girl friendships, dating, marriage, and sex. And don't be too weirded out. We do usually split up into guy and girl groups separately when it gets to that final topic, because I know you guys are squeamish. And that's okay. I don't care. You can be squeamish. I don't care. We're just going to talk about stuff you guys want to talk about. I'm not going to go through any sort of class on sex. It's going to be you getting to ask questions. So if you guys are too squeamish to bring it up, it's not going to get brought up. Does that make sense? If it's too weird and you can't say it, then guess what? It's not getting said. So if you guys have questions, bring them. We're going to be willing and ready to answer your questions.
Nah, I've already answered all my questions.
Okay, great, cool, that's fine. Anyway, so that's all coming up. That's Friday nights, every week, 6 to 10. Be here. Please register online. It's free. It's just so we know how much food to get. We like to know how many of you guys are coming. It's been really helpful so far to know how many to expect. First week we had 23 of you guys. Second week, on Friday, we had 25 of you guys. So it was really helpful to know there was that many of you coming so we can actually get enough food for y'all. Yeah.
Chicken
Do you ever know what happened to that one kid?
You can't just say
When
that.
we were in
The one that got away.
Pastor Sam's office, and we were talking about this.
Oh, yeah. Not a story I'm going to share with everyone, but yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Do you know what happened?
Yeah, and if you would like to know the answer to that, I would be happy to discuss it with you afterwards. It's just not something I want to bring up right now. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, happy to discuss with you. It's the best it could possibly be. Think of it that way. No
Alright.
bad news.
Okay.
So, anyways. All right, today we are going to be in Genesis chapter...
7.
22.
Did my remote die?
70.
The battery's going
You
dead.
gotta point out the
Genesis
projector.
30. Well, no, it doesn't work off the projector. It works off a little receiver right back here.
Well, maybe it got blocked.
It's probably a pop-up.
I
I'll
flipped
bet
to
you
it
it's when you're in
first.
front of the
I'm
window.
first.
Go to
I
your
win.
own page.
That page.
There it is. Yeah, it was just a pop-up.
He said Genesis
Okay.
30.
We're going to be in Genesis chapter 30
Oh, wait,
today.
Oh, you-
This is by far one of the strangest chapters in the Bible. It's probably one of the number one chapters I've heard other people teach, and I walk away going,
What?
nuh-uh,
Page 30.
that's not what that means. There's no
There
way.
you go.
But likewise, I hear what they say. I say nuh-uh, and I've still never really, until last week when I was really digging into this, I never really understood it either. I always found it to be really weird. The first half is understandable. The first half makes sense. It's not great. It's just, it's not weird either. The second half, though, always stuck out to me as like somewhere between the Bible is saying someone did magic or the Bible is gobbledygook and makes no sense. Like, and that's really how the second half of the chapter is always read to me. It's just that weird. So when we get to it, you'll see what I mean. But for now, we're going to read through the first half, and the first half is just a lot of what Genesis is. It's weird family issues. So some of you guys are new. Welcome to Quincy and Lexi. Thank you guys for being here. You guys have been missing out on all the prior chapters running up to this. Maybe you know Genesis, maybe you don't. But leading up to this, we got to see a really messy family situation. And some of us are familiar with that. Some of us have messy families. But what happened was, guy falls in love with girl. Guy asks girl's dad, can I marry her? Dad says yes. Guy and girl are totally in love. Dad says, you just gotta work for me for 7 years, dude, and without pay, and then you can marry my daughter. And the guy's so in love, he's like, okay, sure, fine, whatever, I'll do it. So he works for the dad for 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, he's like, can I marry her now? And dad's like, yeah, sure. And then wedding night, party, this is like thousands of years ago, right? So like no electric lights. And their custom was the bride was completely veiled. And dad pulls a fast one and sends in the eldest daughter, not the one he promised to the guy. The younger daughter is the one he promised to the guy. He sends in the wrong woman. And because there's no light, because there's a big veil, the guy doesn't even realize he has married the wrong woman. Not till the morning when the sun comes up. And he sees her and goes, you're not the woman I'm in love with? What the heck? So he goes to the dad, he's totally mad, he's steamed, like, you tricked me, I married the wrong woman. And the dad says, sorry man, there's like a custom around here. We gotta marry off the older girl before we marry off the younger girl. And that's just a totally, like, malarkey answer. The truth was, he just wanted more free labor out of the guy. He says, you can still marry the younger daughter, that's fine, wait till the honeymoon's over, you can marry the second daughter, you just gotta work for me for another 7 years without pay. Then you can have my second daughter. And the guy's like, you suck, but okay. Okay, I'll do it. So this is how messy it is. It's worse than that, because then after that, we get into this chapter. So now this man has 2 wives, one of which he never wanted. Okay? So last week we found out right at the end of the chapter, the wife he loved is the younger one. Her name is Rachel. And she's barren. She can't have kids. And she's totally like torn up about it. It really, really messes with her that she can't have kids. However, the wife that he didn't really want in the first place, the older sister, her name is Leah, she can have kids. And in this culture, where women are so degraded, so like held in such lack of respect, having kids is what gave them their value. That was how society saw them, was like child factories. It was really horrible, but that meant that the older sister who was not loved by her husband actually was more respected by the community. And the younger sister who was loved was not respected by the community because she couldn't have kids. And so that's like your preface as we jump into this chapter, where it starts to get even stranger. So, since they're all missing just now, Jonathan, would you start us off with... No, it's good. You get one verse. You would have had a big, giant, fat chunk of verses previously. So, go for it. You get chapter 30, verse 1.
Alright. When Rachel saw that she wasn't having any children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister. She pleaded with Jacob, give me children or I'll die.
Which, is an exaggeration, but that's how she feels. She's being honest about how she feels. Johnny, read us verse 2.
Then Jacob became furious with Rachel. Am I God, he asked. He's the one who has kept you from having children.
So he just simply says, I can't open your womb, I can't close it, I can't make you have kids, I can't make you not be able to have kids. Like, this is all in God's hands. Why are you telling me about your problem. Now, on the one hand, he's right. He can't fix it. But on the other hand, that's really incompassionate. Like, there's no compassion in this answer. There's no love in this answer. Let's jump back because you guys were on. We gotta find you again. Can you read one for us? No? Okay. Weston, you got 3 through 8.
3 through 8. Then Rachel told him, "Take my maid, Bilhah, and sleep with her. She will bear children for me, and through her I can have a family too." So Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, and she slept with her, and he slept with her.
I did that first service. It's the same misread.
Wait, where am I?
Sorry, verse 5.
Where's that? Oh yeah, right. Bilhah became pregnant and presented him with a son. Rachel named him Dan, for she said, "God has
Vindicated.
vindicated me. He has heard my request and given me a son." Then Bilhah became pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son. Rachel named him
Naphtali.
Naphtali,
Napkin holder.
for she said, "I have struggled hard with my sister and I am winning."
Okay, now the reason their names are so weird is because they're actually making up the words out of other words. This is something we still do in English today. It's called a portmanteau. It's how most of their Hebrew names came about, and some of them stuck. Some of those names are still around today, and people are still getting named that. And, some of them are not. You don't meet a lot of Naphtalis nowadays, but I actually do know one. I do actually know a Naphtali. It's like the only one I know.
It's
Guys,
right here.
Did you know that
We all
that
know.
wig has coronavirus?
What?
That's the coronavirus wig.
Yeah, we're just saying that all morning.
I'm so sorry.
And I was
Malachi.
the one who
Not
started
the
it.
beer
I'm so
wig.
sorry. Alright, let's leave the wig on the floor. It's better that way.
It's not
Can
old
I take
enough.
it and
Also,
burn it?
sanitize your
On the
head with
floor.
hand sanitizer as soon as you can.
Maybe
Okay?
shave off all of your
Smear it
hair.
in there.
Yeah, shave off all your hair.
Or
Take
yeah,
a
maybe just shave your head. That would be a good alternative.
No.
Anyways, I'm glad you threw the wig away. It's helpful.
Burn
Okay,
it in
so
the holy fire.
Their names are weird, but their names actually have meanings. So in this case, Dan means he judged or he vindicated. My name is Daniel, if you guys don't know me, and my name is made out of Dan, which is already a meaningful word, has that meaning of judge or judged. And then the EL, it's backwards because Hebrew is actually read right to left instead of left to right. And so you actually say the root words in my name backwards and it forms a small sentence. It's God is my judge.
That's my meaning.
Yeah, it's like
Also.
yours is the feminization
Yeah.
of Daniel. Danielle is just Daniel with
Another
Another
L.
L.
an E. Yeah, it's to make it a girl's name.
It's E.
But it's L is God. That's the shortest syllable they had for God back then. And then I, just the letter by itself, literally is a possessive sound in their language. Their language is thousands of years old, and I was still a possessive sound back then as it is now. It hasn't really changed much. And then Dan is judge, so God's my judge. That's what the name means. So most of our names now have some old root like that. Not all of them go all the way back to Hebrew, but a lot of them do. We're going to see today's lead character is Jacob. Obviously, we still have that name. One of his sons is going to be named Joseph. Obviously, we still have that name. These names came from that ancient language. And so when they slap some sounds together like Naphtali, it's putting together words they have for my. That's the I at the end of Naphtali. The Naphtali E is actually the letter I. And then the first part is a combo of sounds that makes it sound like they're saying struggle. So it's my struggle, what I've gone through, my thing to overcome, my thing I've had to fight through. And so she names that the name of her son because, well, she was fighting with her sister over the same man.
Why not?
That's quite the struggle. So their names always have these kind of meanings slipped in there. Now at this point, still Rachel hasn't actually had any children like that she's given birth to, but she's counting Bilhah's children as hers,
Yay.
and she's helping to raise Bilhah's children.
Who's Bill?
So this is Bilhah is her maidservant that she gave to Jacob as a wife. And so now Jacob is up to a grand total of 3 wives, all at the same time.
Multi-ball.
Not the best if you realize how bad it was with just the first two. Just the first two was pretty bad because they were fighting over him and they were jealous of each other. And that's a weird place to be. Yeah.
So I wonder this every time, like, at my house when we read this. So, you know how God doesn't want you to have, like, more than one wife and stuff? Was it a sin? Like, was Jacob sinning because he didn't want to marry
Very
her?
interesting question.
But
At this point in history, there was no codified law. There was no list of do's and don'ts. Thou shalt not. So at this point, you can still sin because there are things God has told them. Like, I had a conversation with you, do and don't do this. So that still counts. And definitely there's the conscience that God gave to each of us. However, in this culture, marrying multiple wives was normal enough. I don't think many consciences would have actually got tripped up by it. However, this story is kept in here, I think, for the express purpose of showing us that having more than one spouse at a time isn't good for you. Regardless of whether it's a sin or not, it's not good for your family. It doesn't help you in any way. And so I think that's really the point of the story. And so I don't want to rewind completely back in history and try and guess where the sin was in this, who was most at fault and who wasn't. And that's not really our job, and I don't think it benefits us. What I think is important, though, is God has since said you shouldn't do that. And at this point, he's already trying to teach us by example, it wasn't a good idea. You shouldn't have done that.
don't do that.
So, and again, he did get tricked, but he had every choice available to him when he chose to marry the second wife. Obviously, he was tricked into marrying the first, but he could have just stuck with that wife, learned to love her, and stood by her. That was a choice he could have made. He didn't make that choice. I'm not going to judge him for it, but he did have that choice. And so, yeah, I don't want to say necessarily before God gives a command for a gray area that clearly he should have known better, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like, it was a good idea even at that point in time. Moving on, where did we stop at? Verse 9. Lexi, are you ready to read? You sure? Mostly I only give a pass to people who actually have true difficulty reading, like dyslexia or eyesight problems or that kind of stuff. If you can read, I'd love it if you'd read. It's good practice to start reading in a big group like this. Gets you over the fear of it, kind of starts to become normal. But I understand. If you have real difficulty, just let me know.
Okay, what do I need to?
It's like a paragraph, so you go from 9 down to 13.
Okay. Meanwhile, Leah realized that she wasn't getting pregnant anymore. So she took her servant Zilpah
Yeah, good
and
job.
gave her to Jacob as a wife. Soon Zilpah presented him with a son. Leah named him Gad, for she said, "How fortunate I am." Then Zilpah gave Jacob a second son, and Leah named him Asher, for she said, "What joy is mine, now the other women will celebrate with me."
Okay, so these sons, Gad and Asher, their names mean good fortune and happy. And those are much better names than we saw previously. I don't know if you remember last week when Leah was having her own kids and she was actually giving birth to them, her names for the first three were legitimate cries for help because she was in a marriage where she wasn't loved. She was married to Jacob, but Jacob really loved the other wife, Rachel. And so the first three kids that Leah has are all cries for help. The fourth one, kind of on the fence, but now, as her maidservant, Jacob's fourth wife, as she gives birth twice, she doesn't name them as cries for help anymore. And I think that shows a little bit of growth. I'm not going to say a ton because, wait, there's more in this chapter. But I think things might be getting better. Or maybe, and this is possible too, maybe she's just feeling like she's ahead in score and she's winning. And so maybe that's why the names are less cries for help. Maybe she's still in a bad place mentally, but she thinks she's ahead. She thinks she's beating Rachel. Yeah.
Since he has more than one wife, would he have 4 wedding rings?
I don't think wedding rings are actually a thing yet at this point in history because this is several thousand years ago. So no, but if he did have multiple wives now, I still don't think you get 4 rings. I'm not positive on that, but I don't think you do. It's not a question I've ever had to ask or look up, but I don't know. We could look into this. I've never had to wonder what would happen if I married another wife because I've never wanted more than one wife. Never really dug into that hole. Okay. Thank you for reading, Lexi. Caleb, your turn. You got 14.
One day during wheat harvest, Reuben found some
Mandrakes.
Mandrakes.
It's a kind of fruit.
Growing in the field and brought them to his mother, Leah. Rachel begged Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes.
Now, mandrakes were an interesting fruit in their culture at that time. They had like a mythology around them. There was a myth that you could become more fertile by eating mandrakes. And so, since Leah's had kids, Bilhah's had kids, Zilpah's had kids, but Rachel has not, she sees one of Leah's sons bringing home mandrakes, and she's, I want those. Please let me have them. Like, clearly, I'm the only woman here who hasn't had kids. I'm the only one here who really needs those. Like, that's why she asked for them. That's why she asked for them the way she does. And then we get into 15. Malachi. Please read us verse 15. Yes?
So, if Reuben gave the mandrakes to Leah, then why would Rachel say, give me some of your son's mandrakes?
No, because he found them.
But
It's just verbiage. It's not like a big deal. It's just how he said it, or how she said it, rather. I don't think it matters.
Weston's really upset about this.
Finders keepers.
Finders keepers, you know? Like, okay.
Give me.
Anyways, Malachi, read verse 15. That's a weird technicality. I never would have even thought of that.
But Leah angrily replied, wasn't it enough that you stole my husband? Now you will steal my son's mandrakes too. Rachel answered, I will let Jacob sleep with you tonight if you give me some of the mandrakes.
And now we get to see how the wives fight. How do they...
That's not right.
No, it's really not.
That's not right.
So Rachel is the clear favorite. Rachel's the one that Jacob was in love with the whole time. Rachel is the one that he essentially worked 14 years for. The first 7 he thought was for Rachel. The second 7 ended up being for Rachel. But she was the reason he worked any of those years.
This is kind of like give me your birthright for soup.
Oh, yeah, it is. You think stuff comes back to bite you when you make bad decisions with your family?
No.
Heck
No.
yes.
No.
It absolutely
That's
comes
why
back to
you
bite
end the bloodline. They
Thank you.
can't take revenge
Thank you,
if
Johnny.
they can't,
Thank
if
you.
they're
That's
not lying.
clearly the right answer. I think we actually discussed this several weeks ago. Remember how I said murder is never the correct answer to a moral question?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Again.
But it's not murder.
Yes.
It's assassination.
Yeah, nope, still murder. You're just going into subclasses
or
now.
maybe you kill him before he's even born.
Nope, that's not even, nope.
Don't mess with time travel. Unless you're giving Hitler a mullet. Then it's okay. Imagine how awesome it would be if
I think,
Hitler had a
actually,
mullet.
I think I'd be okay with that. Because then the mullet would die.
Yes.
Okay, anyway.
And then it would go down in history as the worst thing ever.
Please do not
No,
lead us
give
down
Stalin
that,
a mullet.
Johnny. Please do not lead us down that trail.
But
Of
it's
all of
great.
the trails, Johnny. Not that one. Okay, so we see how they fight. They fight in some pretty terrible ways. Rachel has this power amongst the wives. She's the favorite. And so she has the attention of Jacob. She apparently is the one that he chooses to sleep in the tent of. And this was pretty common back then. Every member of the family, as they got old enough, started to have their own tent. Eventually you would get your own tent. As a kid, you would share a tent with one or, several of your parents. Maybe you'd bounce around from one parent's tent to the next. But eventually, when you became an adult, you get your own tent. And so all 4 wives seemingly have their own tents. Maybe it's just the 2 wives and then the maidservants share. I don't really know. But Rachel's saying, I'll let, Jacob go sleep in your tent. And this seems weird. Think about this. When she says, I'll let him go sleep in your tent, that means she has some kind of control in her mind. She's in charge. She counts herself as the highest ranking wife. And in some degree, she counts herself as in control of Jacob. Isn't that interesting? That's a weird instance. I don't think that should happen with either husband or wife. There should never be an instance where a spouse says, oh yeah, I'm in control of them.
Why not?
No spouse should be able to say that about their spouse.
Doesn't it say in the Bible that the woman will try to control a man, but they never will?
Well, it's not exact phrasing, but yeah, close to. There's a section of the Bible where it's talking about family structure, and it's saying that the man is supposed to lead. He's supposed to be in charge. But that's different than being in control of. Those are like completely different things. At least in English and definitely in Hebrew, there is a willingness to follow and playing on the same team that's involved in the Greek and the Hebrew when they're talking about family structure. So when it says the guy is meant to lead, it's really like a team captain. And the team captain comes up with the play, and then the team only works if they all agree on the play and they all follow the play. If anyone on the team goes, I don't want to do that play, I'm going to do my own play. Like, it doesn't matter if their play is better. The fact that they're breaking from what the team has decided means that's going to mess up the play. Like, it's going to make the team fail. So team captain is kind of where the husband's supposed to fit, not coach. And that's the key. The coach is supposed to be Jesus. He's supposed to be kind of off to the side, in a sense, and giving the ideas to the team and telling them, you did good, you did bad, do this, do that. And the captain is supposed to lead on the field while the coach is off on the side. So that's supposed to be the husband's role. What it does say about the woman is that it's going to always be a temptation, since they're not in the captain's role, to want to be in the captain's role. Why? Why would it be a temptation to have that role?
I mean, it's not that fun, so.
It's not actually that fun to be the guy who has to lead everyone and tell them what the plan is. The reason it's tempting to be in that role is because men aren't always good at that role. And when any of us see someone in authority and they're not good at their authority position,
Then I want
we want their authority. We're like, oh man, I just wish I could be in charge. I wish I could do their job. I could do so much better than them. And that's only true because men aren't perfect, and we're not like gonna be perfect ever at that role God's given us. So it's always gonna be a temptation for anyone who's positioned under us, not just wives, children too, to say, I could do better at that. What the heck is he thinking? They're terrible at their job. So yeah, the Bible does say that, and it's always going to be a temptation. It's just how it is. And the temptation's there too for men to make decisions without consulting God, to second guess the coach, as it were. The coach says, here's the play, you get on the field, and then you tell the team, don't listen to him. Here's the play.
Okay.
So the temptation's there for the guys too. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. The temptation's always there. And in that case, the coach is actually perfect, if you follow that analogy. Even though the coach is perfect inside this analogy, there's still a temptation for the captain to break rank. But that's just human nature.
Should everybody just write a sticky note saying, don't do this, you'll die?
It was almost a good joke. Okay.
If
Anyways,
you don't do God's thing, you'll die.
I thought it was going somewhere good. So Rachel makes the deal, and then we don't get told, but apparently Leah takes the deal. Malachi read, so now it's on to
Nate.
Caleb.
No.
Caleb. Can you read us 16 through 21?
Yeah, Caleb.
There's no need for that.
The evening as Jacob was coming home from the field, Leah went out to meet with him. You must come and sleep with me tonight, she said. I have made for you with some mandrakes that my son found. So that night he slept with Leah, and God answered Leah's prayer. She became pregnant again and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob. She named him
Issachar.
Issachar. Where she said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband as a wife.
And then keep going
Then
till 21.
Then Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a sixth son for Jacob. She named him
Zebulun.
Zebulun. For she said, God has given me a good reward. Now my husband will treat me with respect. For I have given him six sons. Later she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah.
So the first son's name was Issachar. That name means reward. That's actually son 9 in the whole family. All right, it's son 5 that Leah's given birth to, but it's son 9 in the family. And then after Issachar is Zebulun. Zebulun means honor, and Zebulun is now son 10. It's her 6th son. My goodness.
That's a lot of
10 overall, 6 for her. And then she gives birth to a daughter named Dinah. Now, at this point, we're getting real close to the 7-year mark from marriage, from when they got married. So within 7 years, and because there's 3 women giving birth in this whole family so far, within 7 years they now have 10 boys and at least 1 girl. And I do have to say at least, even though the math says they probably really only had 1 girl, because daughters usually aren't mentioned in the Bible, at least at this point in history. Genesis is like the oldest book in terms of how far back we are in time. And at this point in history, the daughters almost never get mentioned unless they're going to come back up and the story will revolve around them at some point in the future. Then they get mentioned. So Dinah will. At some point, Dinah's actually going to have a chunk of story revolve around her. And therefore they mention her. They see fit to mention her existence. But most of the daughters that exist at this far back in the Bible get totally looked over because of the culture. They just aren't mentioned. Now remember, this isn't even the author's fault necessarily, because the author didn't even live at this point in history. This point in history we're talking about in Genesis 30 was many, many thousands of years ago, whereas Moses, who wrote this, was only alive a few thousand years ago. So he's writing this from accounts, and God's filling in some details where he needs to. So if the culture in Genesis 30's time doesn't mention daughters, then several hundred years later, when Moses finally writes it down, he would have no way to even know they existed unless God sees fit to mention them out of the blue. So it's weird, but like you can't even necessarily blame Moses. He's just writing what he knows. So Dinah is born. There is 10 sons born so far. 6 of them for Leah, which is pretty amazing when you consider there's only been 7 years. That's 7 kids in 7 years. Dag. That's a lot. Okay, then we get to the last chunk here before the super weirdness. Sonia, go ahead and read us 22 through 24.
Then God remembered Rachel. And
Okay, wait,
God
time out. I'm sorry. Okay, Nate and Malachi, you guys can't sit next to each other. Sorry. One of you got to find a new seat. Quick, hurry. One of you, go.
There's a seat.
Find a seat next to someone you are not going to talk to. Don't choose wrong.
And over there.
Nate.
Go what?
No,
Are you
they're gonna
allowed to
talk.
talk to everyone?
Okay, there we go.
They're gonna talk.
What's up?
Hey.
Okay, sorry, Sonia, 22 through 24, one more time.
Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son.
Daniel?
Yeah.
It says God remembered her, so did he forget her?
It's a really good question. There's multiple times in the Bible where it says God remembered her,
Oh.
or God remembered him, or his, and then it says the thing, right? Their plight, their distress, their whatever, their situation. So many times that happens, and people often ask the question, does God actually forget things, therefore he can remember them? And the answer is a little weird. When we talk about God, you gotta remember, we're using words we've invented for humans, because that's generally what we talk about, to then describe God. So it's not just the word remember, it's every word you use to talk about God. Every word in the entire Bible that's used to talk about God is a little bit off, because we're using human words to try and describe not a human. Does that make sense? So like, it's kind of like if you go in the other direction and you tried to talk about what a slug thinks. Your words wouldn't match properly. When you say things like want for a slug, is that want the same as your want? When you say a slug hates it when, is that the same as me saying you hate it when? Does that make sense?
Our decisions
Like
are
the
theirs.
way a slug feels is so much different from us when you use the word want or hate or love or need. You're kind of twisting the word to fit that slug, to make it work. You're kind of personifying. And what that means is you're sticking a human type set of emotions and thoughts onto something you know doesn't have human thoughts and emotions. You know it doesn't. But that's the only way you can talk about it. There's no words for it unless you get super scientific and you start using multiple syllables for all of our normal easy words. And so God's the same way, but in the other direction. When you try and say God remembers, God wants, God loves, God hates, God thinks, God forgot, it's not the same as us, but it's in the opposite direction as like we went to get to the slug. his remembering is different than our remembering. His loving is different than our loving. His hate is different than our hate. And it's hard for us to really picture, but what we do instinctively, naturally, is we take a human set of thoughts and emotions and we stick them on God. And so that's how we talk about it. And it's not exact. It's a really bad approximation. So I'll try and undo what we've done here by saying God remembers. As far as I can tell, based on this and other places where it says God remembers, it seems more like God has set a time in advance when he will take action on a thing, a problem, an issue, a request, whatever. And when that time occurs, it's like the alarm has gone off and he goes, oh, it's time. That's closer to what he's going through. For us, that's almost exactly like what remembering is like. Suddenly it dawns on you, oh yeah, I gotta do that thing. And that's like an alarm went off in your head. So for us, we might say remember. For him, that's implying too much. That's implying things he never experiences, like forgetting. Does that make sense? So God's so much in control of his own thoughts, it's different for him. We can say things about him and it's still different. So the Bible actually says he does forget things. But when he forgets them, it's because he wants to, which is a really weird thought. And it's not like he doesn't know them. It is rather that he chooses to operate like he doesn't know them. So it says when he forgives you of your sin, he forgets them. He treats you like you didn't sin. Does that make sense? It's not the same as, oh, I don't remember you sinning, what? It's literally he's making a conscious decision. I'm going to treat you like you didn't sin.
So he owns the power of, I missed the 10 seconds where I didn't know that existed.
I'm not sure I followed that.
It's the internet saying of, I don't like that thing, I wish that would be erased from existence, so I missed the 10 seconds when I didn't know that existed.
Or I knew that existed or didn't know that existed?
No,
Depends what it is, whether it be an image or a post or...
Like if it's Harambe, then we all know it's
I think I got it, but I'm not sure. But we'll move on. We're into the weird stuff now. I find this very entertaining.
Oh, so that stuff wasn't weird?
Oh no, that wasn't weird. That's just
like
family.
putting 5 drunk
That's
monkeys
that's
in a
normal
room.
for family.
Yeah, I mean, you
Look,
just need
families
to call
are,
Dr.
if
Phil
families
on
aren't
that.
that weird, then is it really a family?
This entire class...
I'm asking you.
No.
You gotta, okay, thank you. All right.
I know, right?
Now we get into 25. This is where it gets interesting. You're welcome, Trinity. 25 and 26 for Trinity.
Okay. Soon after Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Please release me so I can go home to my own country. Let me take my wives and children, for I have earned them by serving you, and let me be on my way. You certainly know how hard I have worked for you."
So now, right as we pass, boy number 11, he's child 12 essentially, because Dinah. It's 7 years from the wedding, and that's when he's supposed to be released. He promised he would work 7 years so that he could marry Rachel. 7 years is up. They have a ton of kids, and he goes to Laban, his father-in-law, and says, I want to be released. I want to go home. I want to take my kids, my wives, and just be a free agent, go work for myself. Yes. By the way, when you stick your phone in the bucket, put it on silent. Let's see Laban's response. Because remember, he didn't trick him because of an actual need to marry off the older daughter first. He tricked him because he wanted 7 years of labor out of this guy. Does anyone remember why? Why he was so interested in this guy's labor?
He's a good worker.
That's it. He was an excellent shepherd.
Animals.
He was a top-notch, best of the best shepherd. And so Laban knew, if I can get him for free, for no money, for no sheep in payment, like, I'm going to make bank. And he has, for 14 years, made huge amounts of profit off of Jacob.
Don't.
And so now Jacob says, I want to leave. Guess what Laban's going to say?
No.
Well, but he has no legal hold on him. So he can't just say a flat no. He's got to be a little crafty. Quincy, can you read for us? Is reading difficult for you?
Here's a little less
You
than
find
a
it difficult to
trick
read in a group?
It's okay.
That's fine. You're brand new. I understand. You want to give it a try? Just a little
If
bit?
you want to be good.
All right, man. You got to get over it at some point. That's all I'm saying. You got to get over it at some point. I'll give you grace. Your first day. 27. See, would have been a single verse. Wouldn't have been that bad at all. Peach, would you read us 27?
Please listen to me, Laban replied. I have become wealthy, for the Lord has blessed me because of you.
Oh, sorry, and 20. My bad.
Yeah, I think
Tell
Jack.
me how much I owe you. Whatever it is, I'll pay it.
Ooh, that's a good offer, right? You go in for the job interview, and the interview goes so well, the guy at the company says, name your wages. Name your salary, whatever you want it to be, we'll pay you.
Just say
What do you ask for?
Just say yes.
But
Just
this
say
isn't
yes.
this isn't just anybody.
Yes.
This is Jacob. And
Fine,
Laban
what do you
is
want?
nearly as
Yes.
crafty and as clever as they get. Jacob is basically as clever as they get. So now you've got these two crafty, clever guys at the negotiation table.
They're doing it.
And one says, I'm leaving. The next says, I'll pay you whatever you want to stay. What does the second guy say?
Deal
There's a little
everything.
lesson in trick.
Deal!
Yes.
You don't even name the price, you just say yes!
Yes.
Did I just say that?
Hannah, could you read us 29 and 30?
Jacob replied, You know how hard I've worked for you, and how your flocks and herds have grown under my care. You had little indeed before I came, but your wealth has increased enormously. The Lord has blessed you through everything I've done. But now, what about me? When can I start providing for my own family?
Interesting, he doesn't even answer the question. This is a masterful tactic. The second you realize the person across the negotiation table wants you more than you want them, right? They want something from you more than you want something from them. As soon as you realize that, back up.
You get everything.
Act like you're leaving. Act like nothing they could offer you is enough.
Stop.
As soon as you realize their need is greater, start to leave. They get desperate. They start to really mean it when they say, I'll give you anything. Do you see how he's leading him? Oh, it's so crafty. Okay, Maya, do you want, yeah, let's have you do 31 through
I'm
33.
here to change the future.
Okay. What wages do you want? Laban asked again. Jacob replied, Don't give me anything. Just do this one thing, and I'll continue to tend and watch over your flocks. Let me inspect your flocks today, and remove all the sheep and goats that are speckled or spotted, along with the black sheep. Give these to me as my wages.
That's not actually nice.
In 33?
Yes.
Okay. In the future, when you check on the animals you will have given me as my wages, you'll see that I have been honest. If you find in my flocks any goats without speckles or spots, or any sheep that are not black, you will know I have stolen them from you.
Okay. Now, Jacob, being a very clever man, is thinking 2 moves ahead on this little chessboard they're playing on. Because he knows if I name my price, all the speckles and spots, then Laban will do something to remove them. If I name my price, all the solids, all the pure black, all the pure white, then he will do something to remove all the solids. He is going to try and make this a bad deal for me. Jacob knows this in advance, but he also knows more about sheep, more about goats than even Laban does. And so he's willing to risk that Laban is going to cheat him on this deal. So he intentionally puts out a deal that he knows Laban will think is better for Laban, so that Laban will say yes. Except Jacob knows he can twist this to make it better for Jacob. Abby, can you read us 34 through 36?
Alright, Laban said, It will be as you say. But that very day Laban went out and removed the male goats that were
Streaked.
streaked and spotted. All the female goats that were speckled and spotted, or had white patches, and all them in the care of his own sons, who took them a 3 days journey from where Jacob was. Meanwhile, Jacob stayed and cared for the rest of Laban's flock.
Okay, so get this. He makes the deal. I get the striped and spotted goats. I get the black sheep. Immediately Laban says, deal. And then he goes to his sons and says, get the striped and spotted and the black sheep out of here. Move them now. And the boys take them 3 days journey away. So when Jacob goes back to work the next day, and his payment is to be all the striped and spotted and black sheep, there are none.
You wanna know why?
He walks out to the flocks, and there's none. It's a pure flock. There's nothing there that is his pay. He gets 0. And Laban's like, I've won. It's my
That's
flock.
what
I'm
you
in
think.
control. I can split it however I want. He never made any demands as to how the flock got split before he started work. So I get to pre-split the flock. That's totally legal. It's within the realms of the deal. So I win, thinks Laban. And Jacob just doesn't say anything. He's not miffed. He's not mad. He counted on this. He knew it was going to happen. But again, he knows more about sheep and goats than Laban does. So he has a plan up his sleeve. Verses 37 through 40. This is where it gets a little voodoo magic and you think the Bible's nuts. Oh, Ayla, you missed out on reading. Do you wanna take this section? Good job, Maya. That's why you're not the best friend. Oh! Sorry, that was a conversation from before you got here.
F is in chat.
I have all of the above.
Oh, okay. Alright, Ayla, you've got 37 through 40. It's not like it's like the biggest paragraph in the entire section we're reading today.
It's close though.
But it is really close.
Then Jacob took some of the fresh branches from popular almond and plane trees and peeled off strips of bark, making white streaks on them. Then he placed these peeled branches in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, for that was where they mated. And
That's interesting.
and when they mated in front of the white streaked branches, they gave birth to young that were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated these lambs from Laban's flock, and at mating time he returned to the flock and faced Laban's animals that were streaked from black. This is how he built his own flock instead of including Laban's.
Thank you very much. Alright, now, reading that in plain English. Hey guys, wig, toss that way. Thank you. Reading that in plain English doesn't do it justice. I honestly think the translators themselves, when translating this from Hebrew to English, didn't understand what was actually taking place in that flock with Jacob. And I think that makes their translation a little weird. I've read this chapter many, many times, and still to this day, it sounds like this in English. It sounds like he took some sticks, he put them in front of the sheep, let the sheep look at the sticks, and that made their babies come out streaked. That's what it sounds like it says.
What?
Does that mean if you
When
look
you
at
read
Keanu
the
Reeves,
English, that's what it
you
sounds
have
like.
a child
So-
that looks like Keanu Reeves?
Honestly, it sounds like that's what the Bible's trying to tell us. And like, that's
I can look
cuckoo.
at elephants.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I like this dude.
There's no
Oh,
reason
look.
at all that should ever make sense. And honestly, that's not what the Hebrew says. That's not what the actual written word says. That's just the best they could do because I don't think they get it. So, and I don't blame them. For thousands of years, there is a shepherding technique that Jacob employed all the way back there, and many shepherds still did it over those last few thousand years, but we kind of forgot why, or maybe we never knew why it worked in the first place. But Jacob's employing it with his flocks, and it totally works. And Jacob was employing basic genetic knowledge without probably knowing anything about genes at all. All he knew was when you breed sheep this way, they come out this way. When you breed goats this way, they come out this way. And he knew this from experience. Did he know about genes and DNA? No.
He must be good
But
at
he knew
Minecraft.
how to breed animals. So, two simple things you gotta know. Does anyone know about dominant and recessive genes?
Yes.
Okay.
What?
Yep.
In
Yes,
the
I
Middle
do, I do.
East, having streaked or spotted goats was rare because that's a recessive gene in their species of goats. Having a solid, light, or dark colored goat, that was the dominant gene. So in any given flock at any given time, the number of striped or speckled goats was relatively low, and the number of solid colored goats was very, very high. Likewise for the sheep, white was the dominant gene and black was the recessive gene. So in any given flock, there would be mostly white sheep and very few black sheep. There's a natural process if you just let them breed with whoever they want for that to stay that way. It's the dominant recessive genes. However, if you watch and you track which sheep mates with which sheep, you can start to figure something out. When a white sheep gives birth to a black sheep, and it mated with a white sheep, right? So 2 white sheep and suddenly a black sheep, then you know both those white sheep are carrying the recessive black gene. And if you know that, and you keep track, and then you corral them and push them into pairs so you know who's mating with who now, you can encourage more black sheep to be born than would statistically happen under normal conditions.
Yes.
You can make the flock turn out black sheep out of white sheep.
Yes.
Isn't that wild? Same thing with the speckles and spots. If you watch the solid goats that randomly have speckled and spotted children, you know those solid colored goats have the spotted speckled recessive genes. You can then encourage that mating pair in the future, and you can get the flock that's all solid color to pop out speckled and spotted little baby goats. Isn't that cool? So he's watching this, he's keeping track of this, and then he's doing one more thing. He's using sticks.
And
Stick
stones.
technology is pretty advanced. This
Is
might
he
go over
beating
your
the
heads,
sheep with
okay?
sticks?
It turns out that healthy sheep produce healthy lambs, and healthy goats produce healthy kids. Wild, right? I know, this is mind-blowing. Okay.
Whoa.
But
my
it goes
gosh.
further than that. It goes further than that. Healthy mama sheep,
Pineapples.
mama goats also have increased chances of conception and increased chances of multiple births. So like twins and triplets and quadruplets, the healthier they are. Their body will produce more eggs and therefore more chances for twins and triplets and quadruplets and whatever else. So the healthier the animal is, not only are they more likely to get pregnant and then more likely to have multiple babies, which grows your flock way faster. But then there's another one too. They're also going to come to term quicker, which I didn't even think was a thing, but they can be like 4 days quicker, which in, goat and sheep time is a lot quicker. And that means they're ready to have a kid again a lot sooner if they have the baby a lot sooner. So you have healthier babies happening way more frequently. All you have to do is make sure your animals are healthy. So this is where it gets interesting. People have recently, just in the last few decades, done research to find out, does feeding poplar branches to your herds actually help them? And this is like cattle, sheep, goats, all over the board. And it turns out poplar is really high in certain nutrients, certain vitamins, and certain things you just can't get anywhere else in their diet. In such high concentrations, they couldn't find a downside. That literally feeding this to them at almost any quantity was better and better and better the more you fed to them. And on top of that, the components of poplar, and actually willow too, which is just where do you live in the world? Do you have willow or poplar? You can actually dissolve out these components in water. They're so strong and so prevalent in the wood, you can literally just strip the bark off and stick it in water, and the nutrients will flood out into the water.
Like a
And make
tea bag.
pineapple.
Like what he did. That's what he did. He stripped the bark off and stuck them in the watering holes.
That just like a tea bag.
It is. It's exactly. You steep it in water. So they figured out that this is real. And I mean, guys, look at these percentages. In the high treatment groups, with increases being 41 to 34% respectively, that's a lambing percentage. That means out of the same size flock, you get 34 to 41% more lambs.
Delicious.
What? 34 to 41% more lambs by just including these particular sticks in their diet somewhere.
So what if we just make
What?
that wood?
41 is a
As,
large
like,
number.
The one.
That is a lot more lambs walking around. On top of that, if you give them the higher doses, go from like a 92.9% conception rate, that means for every time they breed, they actually get pregnant, to a 100% conception rate. 100% pregnancy.
That means you get pregnant.
Every time they breed, they become pregnant. 100% of the time. That's mind-blowing. 100% conception rate is like unreal. That shouldn't happen in any species. Okay. And like I mentioned, 4 days earlier on birth, and the lambs were healthier. To have your baby early and then be healthier is pretty bonkers crazy. Okay. So all of this gets better. Effectively what this means is, if you just stick some sticks in their water, they have more babies and better babies. Isn't that so weird? But he knew this from experience. Okay, on top of that, he didn't just stop at poplar, he also used almond. Almond helps a bunch of different diseases and disorders to not only go away, but stay away. And a lot of them are reproductive. Some of them will just flat out kill your sheep if you don't cure them. So this is basic medicine he's sticking in their water. And he's able to just give it wholesale to them because it's just food for them. They don't care. They eat this stuff. And then he gave them plain, which is a tree we don't really have over here. It's very much native to only these few places in the world. So you give them plain, and again, it starts to help them as an anti-inflammatory. Does anyone know what an anti-inflammatory is? It's like ibuprofen, aspirin, Tylenol. All of those are anti-inflammatories. So you give them plain branches. It's like giving them painkillers. They just are happier sheep and goats now. They just don't have achy joints. They don't have arthritis. They don't have those problems like the other sheep do. But this is where it gets interesting, guys. I'll take the last section of verses, okay? Check out how crafty he is. Watch this. 41 to the end. Whenever the stronger females were ready to mate, Jacob would place the peeled branches in the watering troughs in front of them. So he was picky. He didn't do this for the whole flock.
I'm picky. Some sheep got special treatment.
Then they would mate in front of the branches, but he didn't do this when the weaker ones, or with the weaker ones. So the weaker lambs belonged to Laban, and the stronger ones were Jacob's. As a result, Jacob became very wealthy with large flocks of sheep and goats, female and male servants, and many camels and donkeys. Effectively, what he's doing is this. He is controlling, by careful breeding practices, the outcome of the flock. He's taking a flock of solid colored goats and white colored sheep, and he is making it so that every time a not healthy animal is going to breed, it's going to come out solid or white. And every time a healthy animal is going to breed, it's going to come out striped or black. So that the result is the least good sheep stay in Laban's flock, and the best sheep and goats go out to Jacob's flock.
So weird.
That's flippin' genius. Because again, Laban agreed to this. The careful control of the flock is literally what he's being paid for. That's what Laban wanted. And so by this, guys, it's kind of crazy, but he's now doing something where he is making it so that he's making more money than his boss.
Sounds like.
All right, so I got a question for you. Now that sounds like too good to be true, right? How long do you think you could make more money than your boss before your boss says enough is enough? How long do you think that could last?
A lot.
7 years.
A lot. Too much.
A year.
It's a hard question, right?
17,000.
Because if you're making more than your boss, and your boss is making very little,
then that means
then he's not going to last very long. He's going to fire you real quick. But if you're making more than your boss, and you're still making your boss a lot, that's tough. He might put up with that for a while, because he likes that you're still making him a lot. And that's like, how long could it last? Well, he's already worked for him for 14 years.
Is the boss doing any work?
And I think he's going to work a total of 12 since the marriage, so the remainder is 5.
He's making more, but I'm making.
This is going to go on like this for like 5 years. 5 years. Do you think at the end of 5 years, when Jacob is richer than Laban, even though Laban has been in business like as long as Jacob's been alive?
Laban doesn't even know what's going on.
I think for a while Laban does not know what's going on. I think he does not catch on quickly. Because he just leaves it to Jacob. That used to work the last 7 years. Why would it work now? So he leaves it to Jacob. Jacob goes at it for 5 years. He manages to become filthy rich in the meantime.
Does that mean he's really dirty?
Well, he's a shepherd, so actually, yeah. I mean, lambing is not a clean thing. So he becomes crazy rich over 5 years. Now, remember, both halves of the story. First half, right? First half, Jacob is using, and to some degree abusing, the fact that the 4 wives are jealous of his time and his affection. And now, when he's not at home and he's at work, he's using, and to some degree abusing, his relationship with his father-in-law / employer, Laban. So at home, he is living in a situation, partly not his devising, partly his own devising, where he is coming out ahead and everyone else is losing. And at work, he has concocted a situation completely of his own devising, where he is coming out ahead and everyone else is losing.
They can't sit next to each other.
I know, man. It's bad.
Why don't you just kick them out?
You had a buffer before, right?
What? I had a buffer?
What's a buffer?
A buffer is a thing that goes in between to keep the 2 things apart.
Yes, I had
I thought it was a
But
bodyguard.
you took that buffer away.
I'm sorry, I thought I was doing good.
No.
How about here? If
I
they're
should
gonna
have just
act
moved
like
Malachi
kids, send
next
them
to a
down to
leader,
the kids'
so
room.
Luke could poke him in the eye repeatedly.
If they're gonna
It's,
act like
it helps
kids,
you
send
not
them
be
down.
distracted when you poke in the eye. It's very easy to focus on your eye as it's being poked. Go poke him. Poke him, Hannah. We're almost done anyways.
Poke him.
So, the question is this, guys.
Fine,
If you had
poke
the
him.
choice, if you had the choice to put yourself in a situation where you will always come out ahead and everyone around you will always lose, would you put yourself in that situation?
Yep.
Yep. Sign me up.
It's really easy to say yes because we're naturally selfish. But when you stop to look at the consequences, when you stop to look at what will happen later, it stops being as interesting. If you're on a team where you get 100% of the credit and the coach treats you like you can do no wrong, what will the rest of the team start to think about you?
They're gonna.
If they leave you, don't let them.
They're going to start to hate your guts. They're going to start to think you're not worth it. No matter how good you are at your game, you're not worth having around. Because it sucks having you around.
Tell that to Esports Pro League.
That's well, and some of those aren't even team sports, so yeah, it kind of works. If you're in a family where the parents treat you like you're the good son and you can do nothing wrong, you're the good child and you're the best and everyone loves you, and the other kids are the opposite, what will eventually happen to you?
The parents
Someone's
are
gonna
gonna
die.
leave
Murder.
and they're gonna pay them.
Murder!
Heck yeah!
I think long enough, yeah, that is an eventuality. And depends on the family, but yeah, I mean, we're actually going to see it in a few chapters. That's where this ends up going.
My family is kind of the opposite. My mom and dad always treat me as a good child, except I'm the one who gets punished, even when he does something.
That's a
If he
little
breaks a
convoluted,
vase,
yeah.
I get punched.
Well,
You should have
Hope
been
not.
watching.
And then
Cuneo.
harder. No,
when,
not the belt.
When favoritism occurs, when preferential treatment occurs, whether it's self-chosen or others chosen, it will brew hatred. It doesn't brew love. That's not what happens. And it doesn't matter if it's in a family or in the workplace or wherever it pops up. When that sort of disjointed, uneven family situation occurs, it will start to make love very difficult. Very, very difficult. And so Jacob is willingly engaging in this. He's not putting a stop to it. And in some cases, he's actively promoting it. And so the question is, how long can that last? And is it worth it? Let's say it does last for 5 years. Is it worth it to have the fallout that comes after?
My mom and dad says I am too good to love my brother. We have too good of a life to hate
Johnny,
them.
there are points where you can say too much about your family in a non-family situation. Because at some point you're gossiping and you're throwing family members under the bus. Understand? I'm not
That's
saying
the
you're
point.
wrong. I'm not saying you're lying to me. I'm just saying there's a point where you're sharing more than is healthy to do in this environment. Does that make sense?
I've never had social contact, so I would not know these things. And if people don't tell me, there's really no point.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll tell you now. Please don't share like that, where you talk badly about anyone else.
So should I talk about my friends that way? Or my
Did I say
family?
anyone else? Because I think I said anyone else.
Well, then how am I supposed to tell people that the world's gonna explode because of some
By not-
nuclear disaster?
By not mentioning names. By not calling out individuals.
This one person might have done something sometime, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Better?
Also, John, raise your hand. Thanks. Okay, anyways, so to wrap up, when you guys are looking at that situation next time, I can pull one over on this person. They won't know the difference. I can take advantage of them. I can be in control. I can get the better of them. I can trick them. I can lie to them. I can, whatever the situation is where you're going to come out ahead and they're going to come out losing. Remember, the consequences are important and that you can't come out ahead forever. There will always come a reckoning. There will always come a day where judgment falls. And it's basically never worth it. That's the problem. It doesn't matter how you take advantage of people. It doesn't matter how you abuse them. There will always come a reckoning. There will always come judgment later. And it's never going to be worth it. So when you take advantage of people, realize that is a temporary gain for a selfish reason that can't last forever and damages your relationships permanently. So you're getting temporary good and you're getting permanent bad. That never works out. That never falls out in your favor. So if you really are selfish, protect your relationships. Protect your family. Don't abuse them. Don't use them. Nate, don't try and come out ahead. Does that make sense? If you're
Winning
really
is wrong.
selfish, you should be trying to invest in the people who are in your family. Likewise, if you're loving, you'll do the same. But what it takes is it takes wisdom. In those moments where you have the chance to pull one over on your uncle and get all his money, it feels like you're really going to win. But the truth is, he might come after you with an army someday down the road and try and kill you.
Okay.
I'm not joking.
He actually does.
That actually happens. Or when you try and steal your brother's birthright, and he threatens to murder you, and he's not just joking, he means it. Like, that might actually...
What if you kill
That's
him?
actually what happens. Like, these are the legit consequences. And so far, Jacob's already seen some of these, and some of them are still coming, but he still hasn't learned. And so my recommendation to you is read his story, see where he breaks wisdom and breaks knowledge, fails horribly in making his decisions, and doesn't learn. And maybe you can learn faster than he does. Before 5 years of abusing your family happens. Before the consequences fall. So, learn quicker. Take his example and learn from it. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you so much for your word. We thank you that we get to look into it. We thank you that it's not just voodoo and mysterious words. There is actually sense and logic behind it. Help us, Lord, to not just read these stories and get the facts down and understand what happened, Lord, but Lord, help us to learn some true wisdom, some true knowledge, and to not repeat those mistakes we see them making. Help us, Lord, to be the people in our family that really act like family. Even if the rest of our family doesn't, or some of it doesn't. Help us, Lord, to be the light to that part of the family. Lord, may you help us be the compassionate ones. May you help us be the humble ones. Lord, please help us be the serving ones in our family. Lord, may we guide by example, even though we're not the one leading the family. As these middle schoolers are just, at this point in life, someone's kid, Lord, bless them with that ability to lead by example anyways. To be such servants that it starts to rub off on the people around them. It starts to show them the right way to live. Help us, Lord, in all of our families to be wise. Help us to be loving. Lord, may we learn that lesson that Jacob took so long to learn. That family is meant to be guarded and protected and not used and abused. Help us, Lord, to practice that in our own families. And Lord, if there's anyone in our families that are not saved, they don't know you, they haven't been forgiven of their sins, may we be light to them. May we be able to share your love, but also your truth. Help us to open their eyes. Give us opportunity. Give us courage to share the gospel with them. Lord, may our challenge to be missionaries start at home. Lord, help us. It's so hard to share the gospel with family members, but Lord, you know it can be done. And so we just ask, help us with that. With every eye closed, every head bowed, if you're sitting here this morning and you want that salvation, you want that forgiveness, you want to be saved, the Bible makes it so simple. It just says that we've all sinned, we've all fallen short, we've all messed up, and Jesus died. He took a punishment he didn't deserve, and he did it for us. He did it in our place. And the Bible says if you put your faith in him, Son of God, dying on the cross, rising from the dead, you put your faith in him, you believe in him, you can ask and he will forgive your sins. You'll be totally forgiven, wiped clean, made something brand new, and given eternal life. Death no longer scary. You can just go straight to heaven. And if you want to do that today, start that life with Jesus. Have that forgiveness. Be part of God's family. You, with every eye closed, every head bowed, you can just raise up your hand. It's just between you and God. I do want this to be a little bit private, a little bit personal, because I know some of you guys are shy. So please respect that. Close your eyes. And if someone wants that today, just put up your hand. I can't see what's in your heart, but I do see that hand. You can put that one down. God sees your heart, though. He knows what you're going through. I just need you to raise your hand because I don't have that ability. But if you raise your hand, I'll pray with you, help you with the words, and you can talk to God and you can ask him for that forgiveness. Anybody else this morning? All right, well, you who raised your hand, maybe you're too shy, some of you, to put your hand up. That's okay. The hand doesn't save you. It's not even the words and the prayer I'm going to lead that save you. It's your faith. And so if you want to pray this without raising your hand, you're welcome to. I hope you make the courage at some point to talk to someone and ask your questions and figure things out. But yeah, you can still pray this prayer even without raising your hand. So just repeat these words after me in your heart. Dear Jesus, thank you for dying in my place, for taking my punishment. I believe that you rose from the dead. You beat death. Forgive me. Take away my every sin. Everything I've ever done wrong and ever will do wrong. Make me clean. Make me pure like you. And fill me with your Holy Spirit. Use it to guide me. Use it to show me how to live for you. And when I die, take me into heaven so I can live with you in your kingdom forever. Thank you, Jesus. I pray all these things in your name. Amen. Thank you guys for being here. Have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. Stay healthy. And by all means, if you prayed that prayer today, talk to one of us leaders. It doesn't have to be me. It could be Hannah. But talk to us. I want to make sure you guys get your questions answered.
How did you appear up here?
He tried to leave but forgot his phone, so he came back. Talk to us and ask your questions. We just have a few simple ones for you guys. Like, do you have a Bible at home? You know how to read? We'd love to get you one if you don't. Wait, that's gonna be tough. Oh wait, no, there's one in the back. Yay, easy. What would you like, Abby?
Oh, good job.
Happens every time.
How long have you had nice chairs here?
Since I asked for them.
Nice.
Oh my goodness.
Alright, looks like none of my chairs.
It's not plugged in. The yellow cord's not plugged in. Plug in the yellow cord. Coronavirus. The yellow cord. The yellow cord. I've heard things so much today.
Only my face.
We don't need the yellow cord.
Well,
The yellow cord.
we need to
Hi, man. I don't know, but I'm still gonna say hi if you touch your arm.
Are you seeing your highlight?
Wait.
Make sure you
Ness. No, I'm Ness. I'm Ness. I'm Ness.
Wait, make sure you set this up. Make sure you set this up.
Stop. Stop. Oh wait, no. Stop. Stop.
There you go.
Stop.
Wait. I must be. Oh. No, stop. 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 No.
Stop.
No, I don't have a name. You
No,
bully.
Yay.
Why are you bullying?
Rainbow Cruise.
No.
I'm literally gonna beat everybody because my name's Ness and I'm a little boy. Really? Yeah, if you hit me, then you're a bully.
Hey, maybe you should look in the Lord, then you'll know that's partially wrong. Because time travel is confusing.
When?
We just got double versus. Are you bringing the church to boys?
Oh!
Whoa!
You didn't even play. Oh.
I don't even play
I can
this
hit people
game.
through here apparently.
I'm so not.
I can hit people through this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stick in the bucket. I don't care.
This is not nice! This is not nice!
People bring in like a broken phone.
Yeah.
It is literally a paperweight. And
Yes!
stick in the bucket. And like,
I'm sorry, don't hit me!
Yes, don't be a bully.
I wasn't, I was
He
just
doesn't do it
protecting
anymore.
myself.
No, you were really being
I
a
felt
bully.
scared, I felt scared, I felt scared.
He doesn't phone. He
Yeah,
will
well,
take
you
a
were being a
broken
bully.
phone that does not even
I'm sorry, don't hit me.
And
You
stick
shouldn't
it
have,
in
you shouldn't have
Oh
done
no,
that.
it doesn't have the battery.
Don't hit me that hard.
Yeah, it just
Not that hard. And it's not very
I don't
nice.
see people in your class because every single time I see the rain.
Falcon,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
a
All that
bully.
way they actually look nice.
There we go.
I died. This
Someone
is
fix
so
them
not
all.
fair.
Bada boom.
Bada bing, bada
Oh, well, you fix the virus.
Why does this map move so much?
I don't know.
This is the map you want to
Ness,
kill
are you?
yourself on.
How are you
No one
dead?
cares.
Yeah.
No one cares.
Falco freaking.
One Bible is
hits me
askew,
hard.
and they think I don't need to do it. See, we already broke it.
This is why I'm here. I have suspicion.
Oh, you're not.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, you're not.
Are you responsible for posters around?
Just kill White.
I knew it.
I
Kill
knew it.
Black Mark.
I knew it.
No, it's not.
That's right.
That's
That's
racist.
Daniel.
This is Daniel.
No, black and white mark.
Yep, they're all me.
Cool.
Once you go
So
upstairs,
let's
it
go
becomes
jump
like
off the
obvious.
edge now.
So we have a higher concentration than anywhere else.
Too bad there's not.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
No.
I put them up here first, and then I showed them the elders said, you guys want some too? And they had me change like a few of them and add one, and
Sure.
we put them downstairs.
I think it was the zombie one that really stuck out. Like,
I can't take credit for the joke. I literally Googled clever
Nice.
hand washing
Okay.
sign.
Okay. But
And
you-
like all of them weren't clever except for this. And so I designed the whole look of them.
The other
I
person.
took that from a
Like someone
college
just
paper,
charge up
some
your
thesis.
sword or something.
They were doing like communication studies,
I'm
and
gonna
they
be Mark next round.
itemized,
Absolutely
like,
not.
they did
Just to be
like
annoying.
a sample study or a super
Yeah.
study
Wow.
where
I'm
you
being
look at
Mark.
everyone else's studies and you make a
I think
consensus.
your controller's
You
dead.
know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What he does is he consensus and
It's
consensus
very
was
rude.
how do I
have
have
one
things
kill? Why
that
could,
set
like,
your
this
sign
be
apart
No,
from
you
all other signs on the planet. And
The
The
base.
baseline.
one giant block of color. with
Ness,
the
you
white
didn't kill
text.
anyone?
Oh yeah.
Different colors.
See, I got 3 kills. I didn't
No,
say I
wait,
oh
wait.
yeah.
I'm gonna
kill you. Look at
Same
everyone. I'm
size,
kill you with
sign.
Valentine.
They know.
Do it.
I have
Do
it.
it.
Look at that. Oh yeah.
It's a different
I
color.
see his
Wait,
nipple.
Six
Look at
times.
that.
I see his
Oh yeah.
nipple.
And I think the first part
Look at this.
says
Six-pack, yeah.
lead
Do random, do random, do random.
and
Someone,
friendly
someone do random.
and
No, no.
playful
Oh yeah.
as you possibly can.
Oh yeah.
As much playful as you can and
I'm on the
no
bottom.
all
Oh, yeah?
caps,
I
no,
Mark!
you know, capitalizing every word,
Ah!
all font, just the
I have a
same way I
baseball
would
bat.
ask you or
I
tell
play
you
baseball,
something.
obviously.
Same way I would speak to you. So, have a thought.
Wait, who's Captain
I took
Marvel?
out extra words. All
Why?
these words
The
are
pineapple
related.
man.
I'm actually pretty good.
Mark,
It's
can
not
I come
needed.
up and
No.
hang out with you?
We're gone.
Yeah.
Have a thought.
I read
Yeah,
it.
let's just
That's the other thing
fight.
too. You need to measure the amount of time.
No,
No,
really?
Ness, this
It
is
takes your
this
eyes
is a
to
no
cross over the
violence
sun.
zone.
How
Oh,
long does
sorry.
it take?
Why are you
all
up there?
Because it's a no violence zone.
Get out of here, you bully!
Yeah, stop being a bully. This
Kill
is a no
Captain
violence
Guys,
zone.
we make sure they'll read it while
Kill
their eyes
Captain.
flip
Okay, wait, no
back.
violence.
Kill Captain Falcon.
More
Wait, hey, I'm
questions
up
now
here.
than when you first started.
Oh my
But you're
gosh.
the one
now
that
they
set
will
up the
get
bomb
us
up here, so we're
because
good.
Yeah, you
did
initiated the
something
violence.
You got them to think.
Are you hit me?
I'm
Stop
missing
hitting
something.
people.
Clap,
Something
clap,
I
clap.
don't know.
Clap,
Now I
clap.
want to
Oh, no.
read a word, one sentence.
Why are you bullying me?
Wait, wait, what's up?
Get out! Right.
And that's
Oh, yeah.
You ready for
Wait,
this?
wait, wait.
Wait,
Just show your.
I don't have all the
No,
details.
it's show me.
Only a suggestion.
Hey, hey, no violence zone.
One
Nate.
single chunk of
Nate.
information.
You're the one who's nearly killed me.
Intentionally.
You're
Nate,
bullying
Nate
me.
is
Get out!
Nate, stop doing violence.
It's
That's not very nice.
Active walk towards the sign now.
From the basic
Hey,
history
no
of-
violence. No violence.
Violence.
So what it does is by
No,
doing
why
that, it
not?
makes the sign look
It's an
less
absolutely
readable.
no violence zone. Absolutely none.
The unreadability of your details.
Not even
I
one
just
violence.
walked up there and
Sign
started
looks
saying no
like I
violence,
could
and
read
it
it.
kicked me all the way
Say you
Does
bullied
that
me!
make sense? Because
Guys,
the bottom
guys.
is completely
No!
Stop fighting.
unreadable.
This is no violence.
Now I take the sign apart.
Whoever starts violence is gonna
So
get
like
hit
each
in
part.
the
It was
face.
It was Captain Falcon.
Go Captain Falco!
Wait, why though?
Hit me, Falcon!
Because
I'm
Falcon
hoping it works.
you
See? I already
were the
know
one
some
who
people walk past
started
me non-
being violent in the no
I have
violence
no
zone.
idea it's even there.
I know
I didn't know.
Other people are like, dude, there's so many signs for coming.
This one. Up on the
And
keypad.
we're
I'm
just
sorry!
Yeah, yeah,
Pulled
yay.
up
I
like 4
understand everything
posters,
you're saying.
4 in a row. There was like 16
You're not in the no violence zone. You're not in the no violence zone. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's my up B.
Yes, exactly.
Stop playing me.
No violence zone. Okay, no violence.
This is no violence.
Hey,
No,
yes.
Every single
That's
I'm just gonna go.
No. Bad English for no reason.
You sit those?
No, I was trying to hit this. I'm sorry. I'm trying to hit
By
this.
the door where someone stands waiting for their parents to finish talking. That's where you sit them, and that's fine.
No, you
Kill Ness. Please kill Ness.
Kill Nez.
I'm in the
No,
no
no
violence
violence
zone.
It is. It's a small novella.
Wait, but you initiated violence in the no violence.
Ah!
As I
Wait,
approach
you
the
start.
sign,
No, you killed me!
finished reading
He
as
started
I
the
walk
violence in
sign
the
of
no
billboard.
violence zone.
Why?
I was allowed to
It is
hit
the
him.
billboard.
I'm not even doing anything.
Why
Why am I getting
You
hit?
killed me!
Have a
Oh, wait.
But I'm not the one that hit
Wait,
you
I'm in the no
last.
violence zone.
I'm in the no violence zone.
That's my favorite billboard.
Hey,
Someone-
what? I knew it! Yes!
And
I
Can we
knew
just
it.
team up on Bart? She has 3 hearts.
But you have
Yeah,
no
because
idea
I've
what the
actually been
combination
obeying the
is.
rules of the
You're
no
going
violence
to
zone.
when you get home.
Because I'm not a terrible person.
No! No! I can't touch you. Wait.
Either Sunday or toward the
Everyone
Saturday,
talk.
actually bought a billboard
Wait,
just
taunt on
who
3.
are on it.
2,
For this
4,
It's pretty
3.
genius. Because then everyone drives up and.
Yeah, and then
I look like I'm about to kill you.
How do you
Do it. Someone just hit.
Well, as long as you
Okay,
have a
that is now a violence zone only.
it was literally just
Violence.
It's one word. That's
I'm like backflipping right now.
Yeah, and then
the real trick is spelling moves.
Oh,
I'm no longer.
Someone
no, you
beat.
can spell it
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
and you pay for YouTube to automatically
Oh,
put.
dude,
Wait, no, I don't know, Lee.
So,
No.
and
Hey,
according to the basic,
Hey, him.
very, very basic history of
I don't like
computer
He's at like
science.
Okay, I'm in no violence zone.
127%.
Please don't.
No violence.
I know.
Wait! Oh,
And
yeah.
now it's
No violence.
alien meteor, janitor who has access to levels he's
Hey,
shooting,
hey!
or PETA.
No violence.
Literally
It's not violence, I'm just grabbing you. No, stop. I'm
Yeah?
just grabbing you.
28 days, 28
Wait,
28
yeah?
days later,
Yeah?
literally PETA.
No!
You know how long my
Hey,
marriage
hey.
is?
PETA.
Someone hit. It was Mark. Mark hit.
I didn't hit
Falco.
anyone.
Mark hit Falco. I'm calling it now.
Wait, stop kicking me. I wasn't even touching any
Falco
buttons.
hit.
No.
Oh,
Hey,
that was Captain Falco.
That wasn't
Beat
that
him.
one. Guys, I grabbed you. Oh my god.
Just double check.
I grabbed
Oh,
you.
here's
Everyone
one
was
of them.
teaming up. What the heck? Jesus, like,
You guys have it all on
Already
board
got
now.
in. That's
No,
why
I
you
No,
can't
this
get
is
it
no
on.
violence
You
zone.
wanna
I'm
get
gonna
the
get
phone.
so
No, this is no violence zone.
If I jump, I'm not on the violence pad.
Can I get like a
Bet.
It's actually surprisingly easy to survive the zombie apocalypse if you have caveman or
I was on the violence zone.
because
Therefore,
in a
violence
No,
zombie
man.
apocalypse they make like super demons.
He was-
I
So
just
if
obeyed
it's
the
a real
rules.
life,
No,
like,
you weren't on
canonical
it yet.
zombie
You scored
universe
like
because
4
there are literal military studies on
No, but he was on it though.
on a virus like that, since it's still grand access
You've been
to
paying well.
viruses as a normal human. You just stay in a shelter with
Violence up.
leather
No!
doors
Okay, fine.
walls, and
You
about
beat each other to death already. That
Stop.
sounds
No
really
violence.
bad.
No violence.
You like this one?
Everyone's
Which one? This one?
All of them.
Every zone? All of the
All
zones?
of
Yes,
them.
except for the cloud.
Except for the cloud.
Get to the cloud.
Every time
Which
someone does a
means
dumb
the
thing, they
cloud
find more food.
disappears, so that's why it's still
Still, just wait like 3 years and everybody who's an idiot will be
Hey,
dead
hey, no
or
violence.
starved.
That's what I was getting at. I think it'd take longer than 2 weeks because of
No,
the trickle off.
that's how long it takes for something to decompose in a universe like that.
Oh,
Or you
if they
could just-
really, if they really are dead, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, and they've already had time to decompose. And also, a ton of them would